All right, today we're going to talk about issues that are impacting a lot of the players in the game, access to gold, blitzing being 8 rotations a day and insanity, and then slowing down the cadence of the care, bugs in the game, and the changes to war. And this is going to be in the context of the player voice movement. And this list I did not make up. This is your list, right? Welcome to the Mobile Gamer Insanity Hour. Mr. Northern Goblin, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Before we get into the topic of the video, tell me about your experience with the player voice movement, how you got involved, your TCP, your activity level when you started the game, and so on and so on. Just give me a brief overview of who you are.
Okay, so I started playing during COVID. I've got a lot of free time on my hands. Might as well give this game a try, and just built myself into it from there. Probably just shy of 25 mil TCP now over the last 2 years. Playing on and off. As to how I got involved in the players voice movement, when it was first closed and they were starting to open it up to the public, they were looking for reps from various alliances, and myself as part of the Jetsons was asked by one of our admin team to join in. So I got in just before it went public, realized I was one of the few Europeans there, so I ended up becoming a mod to cover the European time zone.
And so you've had a good experience with him, and you're a 25 million TCP player. You're no means like a mega kraken or anything like that. One of the things that came from the player voice movement and the conversations with the council is that there's more gold. You were sharing with me earlier that the scarcity of gold has created a situation where you can't even use your orange gear. You don't have enough gold to upgrade your characters. So tell me about what your efforts are to get more gold.
One of the first big suggestions I put in, I believe that when you're going through a movement and you want to make big sweeping changes, you need to pick your hill to die on. You can't ask for everything at once because you're going to get pushed back. But if you focus on 3 to 4 things at a time, you're going to get more credit. And one of the things I said was, buying gold is not sexy. And I put this phrase in when I was describing it. And I wrote a suggestion as to why gold was a problem, why it needed to change, why in any other game resource roadblocks diminish over time. Gold has not diminished over time in this game. If anything, it's only gotten worse.
Right.
The jump from 90 to 95 is insane.
Over 4 million. Even though we've had more access to gold, my take is it's never costed more gold to keep up. Not only are there more characters in the game from 2 years ago, the level cap increase, that's for all of your usable characters. You want to eventually get them to 95. So the expenditures have never been higher. I actually, at one point prior to this being implemented, my point is, when has the gold shortage been worse? Right? Yeah. I mean, it's terrible.
I have 5 characters at 95. I have a few at 90. Most of mine are at 85 or lower. Until this week, one of my war defenses was still 65. Not because I didn't have the orange gear. I've got tons of orange gear that I can't use. I just didn't have the gold to level up my Emerald 2.0 to get higher. Like Big Time Spider-Man, I've only managed to get him to 70. I want to take these teams higher, but I can't. And I don't want to take them into, I can't take them into teal gear because I don't have the teal gear. But I've got all this orange gear that I'm sat on that I can't use. I'm not asking, as a free-to-play player, I'm not asking to be able to take everything to 95. But I am asking that I want to feel like I'm progressing, and I'm not necessarily keeping up, but I'm not slipping further and further behind.
One of the other things you were talking to me about is Blitz. Now, Blitz, and you have issues with Blitz. Blitz traditionally in the past has been one of the easiest ways for a free-to-play player to be more competitive with the spenders, because largely this is a pay-to-win game. Would you agree? I mean, It is. It's a pay-to-win game. So talk to me about the issues with Blitz and things that you would like to see changed with the Blitz, and how the player's voice can help with that.
Well, free-to-play players, what we can't do with money, we do with time. So when Blitz events do come round, and on paper, it's great that free-to-play players can get all these orbs and get all this character. On paper, it's great. In practice, it's hell, because you are doing 8 rotations a day, which is 16 hours on and off of intermittent gameplay, which interferes in your personal life, your real life, work life, your sleep.
What would you want them to change? If you eliminated Blitz, then that's one of the main avenues.
I wouldn't eliminate the Blitz. And I still believe that, there should be a degree of, playing gives reward. But where I would do it is I would cap the amount of times a Blitz per day can give you orb fragments. and then just increase the floor and the ceiling of how many fragments you get per win, and then how many character frags you get per orb. So you still have to do, say, 150, you have to say get 150 wins a day, but that's going to cut down from 8 rotations to 4, which still is, you're logging on 4 or 5 times a day to get that done.
Right.
And also for newer players, newer than me, who don't have large rosters, these events are somewhat manageable.
And then you got people like me that think it's a horrible game mode and should be deleted from the game. But I know that some people really depend on it, so that's not really fair. But I can't stand it. I think they should just delete it from the game.
I'm one of those strange people that really, really loves real-time arena. And I wish more things were added to real-time arena, even if you just twinned it with Blitz. Like, say, real-time arena wins did the same as Blitz wins. I would do that, because I could live in real-time arena all day. Blitz, for me, is it's a slog.
Now, let's talk about the slower character release and more reworks. And you said that this was something, the cadence. Now, the one thing that I don't know about this is it feels like the cadence has not slowed at all. Like, it feels like it's the same. But I don't know, like they kind of mentioned right here, this will take some time to manifest as the character development pipeline is typically set in motion about 6 to 8 months in advance. What would be optimal for you as?
Yeah, well, when I first played the game, when I first joined, it was when X Factor came out, and it was the Dad Bros, and I think we only got like those 2 characters that month, and that was it. Well, I felt that was too little. And then when Invaders came out, something else dropped at the same time, if I remember rightly, one of the Crucible teams, and we were getting up to like 5 characters a month, and that was far too much. With Bifrost, we have had 3 characters on the free-to-play track last month, and then, obviously we're getting Sylvie this month. That, to me, feels like a really nice release method.
And one of the things that I wish they would have done differently in this post is that they mention per month as opposed to per patch, because patches are not always the same amount of time. And, people will see a patch coming out and they'll see X number of characters. Let's say it's 6, right? It's like, well, how does that fit in when they're trying to get 3 per month? Well, a patch is longer than a month, but that's really not spelled out well here. Now, let's talk about bugs. Now, bugs is something that really bothers me. And the Crucible thing was absolutely terrible. The introduction to the Nova, and now we're getting Black Cat just around the corner. My goodness, I hope it works right and there's no bugs. But just talk about like what you would like to see with bugs and how it's negatively impacted you, specifically with your, you were talking about the Alliance problem. My goodness, with the raid timers. My goodness.
Yeah, that was interesting because there were so many. There were multiple problems with the raid launcher. One of the ones I noticed was because the game doesn't factor in daylight savings times, people were setting their clocks and they were an hour out, and that was just like one of a multitude of bugs that were going on. People were having raids launch and only had like 3 or 4 hours on them. They were just burning through keys like you won't believe. And then they gave us the compensation keys, and the compensation keys didn't even work.
Yeah, it's not a good setup. I think the bugs, like, of all the different types of players in the game, I think bugs is like something that everyone agrees upon, because like the reason why we're having this conversation too is that there's player voice movement and there's different tranches, if you will. That's a fancy word. There's different baskets of players, that have different desires. Krakens might be thinking that, spenders, but like, as far as I'm concerned, bugs affect everyone. Sometimes
I don't think anybody's enjoyed Crucible this week.
No.
Like, if somebody's enjoyed Crucible this week, please come say hi to me, because how this was such a nightmare to deal with.
Not only just the players hate bugs, but you would think that Scopely hates them too, right? Like, it's like, holy moly, everybody agrees bugs are terrible. Let's make it happen. And then lastly, the war changes to the 10 attacks. How has that affected you? And where do you see that going?
Well, for me, because I do a lot of our shot calling in war, it's been an absolute godsend, because before I was having to log in every time there was an energy refresh and mark. Now I only need to mark if there's a new room. If we need to mark a new room, then I can log on and I get pinged. But having to constantly go in and have other players having to go in, whereas now you can pick when you want to get involved, you pick your time to attack, and you can go. Having more player autonomy on as and when they choose to play the game is something I'm really keen on.
All right, so let's get to the crux of the conversation. You've gotten involved with the player voice movement. There's a link right here on the screen to the Discord, and you're very active. Do you feel like it's been a good process for you and what in your alliance, let's say, and what you want to see the game? Do you think this is a good tool? Tell me about that.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the change to gold on its own, if nothing else, the change to gold first and foremost is massive. And it's not just the gold that we're getting here in the War Season rewards. The event that's been going on that ends today, the Photon one, the amount of gold in that, and it's not the first event. They've had this a couple of, over the last few weeks, they've had a few events like this. The amount of gold we're getting in events is unlike anything we've seen before. And my roster, I'm now able to take characters and teams. Yeah, there we go. We are a free-to-play alliance, and we got to milestone 18, and we got it through just competing in the war, using calls on the donations, and saving our alliance points and buying extra war credits in the store. You realize this is one of the things as a free-to-play player that is the feeling of FOMO, and you just have to look at these things and say, okay, that's not going to happen. That's okay. We can still make do with what we've got. But what they're giving us now is so much more that it's really helping build in ways whereas before you didn't have that option.
All right, let's wrap this up with two ideas. Firstly, head over discord.gg/MSFPV. And if you want to get involved with the Players Voice movement, it is a council of players, specifically including free to play, moderate to play, whatever, all different spectrums of it. And then secondly, talk about the podcast that is upcoming.
Yeah, this is in development. We're just wrapping up pre-production at the moment. Myself and Reaper are going to be doing a stream/podcast for the MSF PV movement, which is going to give more people more information about what is going on, what the plans are, where it's going next. The first episode is going to be a mixture of how we got to this point and where we're going from here. So it's going to be a bit of like a chronological thing, but we want player interaction. We want people to give their thoughts. We want to go through the suggestions and highlight things that we think are good suggestions that would affect different brackets and different people. Like, we want to make sure that everybody has a voice. This isn't Marvel Strike Force Kraken movement. This isn't Marvel Strike Force give the free-to-play everything they ever wanted movement. This is player movement for everybody. And we want to have all voices represented, not just on spending brackets, but what on people enjoy. We want to be something for raiders. We want something for people who are for war. We want people who enjoy Blitz. We want people who enjoy arena. We want people who enjoy real-time arena. You know, we want everybody to feel like what they have to contribute is worthwhile, because there are so many ways you can skin this cat in terms of playing this game. Right. And we feel that you can't just cater to one group.
I will always be skeptical of Scobly listening to anybody. But the way that I see this player voice movement is that there's already been changes affected that are positive for the community. And at a minimum, nothing bad is coming of this, and only good things. And so my recommendation is to head over and check it out and offer your suggestions and remain skeptical, right? I mean, let's see if we can make this a better game for everyone. I think that's the end goal, right?
There is a lot of healthy and not unfounded skepticism. Correct. Because of years of what has happened. But at the same time, you know, if somebody offers you the olive branch, you're not gonna turn it down. And so far, from what we've seen and from the feedback we're getting, they have been, you know, there's things they've been reluctant to do, but they've still conceded and done it regardless, because they want to come across this in good faith. As long as this is taken and treated in good faith on both sides, it's going to be productive for everybody. Because, okay, they don't make money off the free-to-play players themselves, but without the free-to-play players, you're missing a great amount of the player base, which affects leaderboards, which means that there's going to be less people getting the high ranks. There's going to be less there's going to be less people for spending players to feel like they're stronger than. You know, you always need someone to dunk on. There's always a bigger fish, but you do need the little fish. And if you don't have the little fish, you're going to have a very small and truncated game where a lot of people then would burn out because they're spending and they're getting nowhere because they don't feel that there's anyone to be stronger than.
Absolutely. Well, head over to the Discord channel if you want to get involved. And as always, thanks for watching. Keep on gaming. Bye for now. Girlfriend, you gotta get it right. Girlfriend, you gotta learn to fight. Girlfriend, you gotta get it right.
this is the point where people continue to talk